doing a bunch of renovations at home right now. I never
Oh
stop.
my goodness, that's so funny.
Driving Kirk nuts.
You'll let me know, Heather?
That's really clever.
So every time he drinks,
I don't think it's liquid.
You can handle that one, Rory.
I'm gonna just keep it on the shelf.
No, I'm passing it over. I could give it to you.
I did one of those Mickey condoms, the same thing, the Seattle thing, and it said go back to on it. He didn't know, and he went to one of the game shows. They just loved that. Nothing, so well played.
Yeah, when do you get the bottom? That's really funny. Okay.
All right, call the public statutory meeting to order. At this time, I would ask everyone to rise, and Councillor Goss will read the land acknowledgement.
As we gather, we recognize that we're on Treaty 3 lands, which are steeped in rich Indigenous history and home to many First Nations and Métis people today. We continue to be thankful for the partnership with Indigenous peoples. We give thanks for the many blessings we enjoy in the city of Kenora. We seek wisdom in our minds, clearness in our thinking, truth in our speaking, and always love in our hearts, so that we may try always to unite the citizens of Kenora. Let these principles guide us in our decision-making.
Thank you, Councillor Goss. Council would ask at this time if anyone wishes to declare a pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof, either on today's agenda or from a previous meeting, or from a meeting in which a member was not in attendance. Seeing none. Today we're hearing an application regarding zoning bylaw amendment D14-21-10. Civic address is an unaddressed property east of 9th Avenue North. The legal description are pins 42169-0159, 42169-0160, 42169-0162, 42169-0163, 42169-0243, 42169-0244, and 42169-0245. The registered owner is 590-1058 Manitoba Ltd. And the agent represented is Hookseller and Lundeen, with Laura Wheatley being the presentator. At this time, is Laura available with us? Okay. Welcome, Laura. You're up first, and you have the opportunity to present the planning application, please.
Thank you. So essentially, the purpose of our application is for a zoning amendment of the subject property to residential third density, which will allow for future development in the form of multi-unit housing. The property itself is vacant land, and it comprises roughly 4.1 acres of land. It is situated on the south side of Brinkman Road and the east side of 9th Avenue North. And it's actually part of the old Abitibi mill site, and it shares common ownership with the main mill site area where the current subdivision is taking place. Legally speaking, the property consists of 7 pins, which are outlined in our application package. And some of these, council may recall, were road allowances that were recently acquired by the city, or from the city this fall. And the property is surrounded by both residential and institutional uses, and the north side of the property is actually entirely single detached dwellings. I'll briefly review the current zoning designations and the official plan designations. The property for the most part is zoned entirely rural, except for a small chunk in the northern part of the property. This was part of a City of Kenora road allowance, and it is zoned institutional. The rural designation does allow for minimal residential development in the form of single detached dwellings. However, the provisions of the terms of the minimum requirements are actually quite cumbersome for the residential development in the midst of the city, which is why we're seeking an amendment to the R3 zoning designation. The official plan designation, it's entirely an established area except for the most southerly portion, which was the City of Kenora road allowance again, and this is designated as rail yard under the official plan. And Kevin may touch on this later. However, it's our understanding that this road allowance was perhaps traditionally used as a boundary point between the established area and the rail yard use is obviously a permitted use under the established area designation, so the amendment to R3 would comply. In terms of our proposal itself, it's admittedly very surface level. Unfortunately, we have no concrete development plans that we're able to provide council to assist them in making their determination on this application. The goal at this time is just to rezone the property to R3 so that the development of multi-unit housing will be allowed in the future, which will essentially be the initial step of any residential development for this area. And we're asking council to consider this zoning amendment at the early stage, and unfortunately without a site plan, for a couple of reasons. And one is that the current zoning designation of rural and institutional does not allow for the types of residential housing that, well, for one is most beneficial for a parcel of land this size that is within city limits and on municipal water and sewer, and also that's compatible with the surrounding residential housing. As I previously noted, the development to the north of Brinkman Road is single-family residential, and these lot sizes are a fraction of what the size of the current parcel of land is, the subject property. So from a marketability perspective, the land is going to be much more attractive to developers if the zoning designation is already in place for residential development. And secondly, the R3 zoning designation will align with the current main mill subdivision, so there'll be conformity and unity in the future development as a whole. So in summary, what we're asking council to consider in this application for their specific property is just a zoning amendment from rural and institutional to a residential third density, and basically for the purpose of facilitating any future development in the form of multi-unit housing. And subject to any questions council will have, I will turn it over.
All right, thank you, Laura. At this time then, Melissa will represent the City of Kenora Planning Department.
I will, thank you. Good afternoon, Your Honor. I'm here representing the planning report, which has been prepared on behalf of Kevin Sumner, our city planner, whom has evaluated the application and has provided his professional planning recommendation on this file. So application for zoning bylaw amendment D14-2110 is for property located on 9th Avenue North. It's best described as that forested area between Evergreen School and the CP rail line. The recommendation as prepared by the city planner is that council hereby approves an application for zoning bylaw amendment, file number D14-2110, to change the zoning of the subject property from RU rural zone and I institutional zone to R3 residential third density. And the effect of approval would enable the multi-unit residential development. Now, as Ms. Wheatley had noted, the applicant has not yet prepared a conceptual drawing or site plan, but any development exceeding 4 residential units will be subject to future site plan control approval. And it is worth noting that this subject parcel will be limited to medium density, so that's about 40 units per net hectare. For the purposes of this site plan, as Laura had identified, it's about 4.1 acres in size, which is roughly 1.65 hectares. So we're looking at anywhere between 28 and a maximum of 66 dwelling units. But again, that is really subject to the site plan control and the future conceptual drawings that will come forward. In an evaluation with consistency and legislative policy and city directives, the proposed zoning amendment is consistent with provincial policy, the provincial policy statement, which states that new development should occur adjacent to the existing built-up area and should have a compact form, mix of uses and densities that allow for the efficient use of land, infrastructure, and public service facilities. Now, the PPS does guide land use in the vicinity of rail facilities to ensure sensitive uses, such as residential, are appropriately designed, buffered, and or separated, and to avoid and or mitigate any public adverse effects from odor, noise, or other contaminants, minimize risks to the public health and safety, and to ensure the long-term operational economic viability of major facilities such as the rail lines in accordance with provincial guidelines. The City of Kenora official plan, within our official plan, the land use designation is established area. So touching upon what Ms. Wheatley had identified as that small road allowance, which was transferred to the developer in the fall of 2021, the city's interpretation is just as she had identified. This is a boundary, and for the purposes of this application, the interpretation is open to city evaluation under section 9.1 of the official plan. So what the official plan says is that minor adjustments may be made to these boundaries for the purpose of any zoning bylaw without necessitating an amendment to the official plan. So what we're proposing here today is that future road allowance was historically identified as rail yard within the official plan, and we're asking that boundary adjustment be made to identify it as the established area to support the zoning bylaw amendment and the future residential development within this area. The established area designation does permit a mix of residential, commercial, industrial, and institutional uses. Residential development is encouraged as infilling or redevelopment on full municipal services, which these will be, and again, medium density residential use is supported, provided that the development is in keeping with the character of the area, which we interpret it to be. Section 3.6 of the official plan addresses development and redevelopment adjacent to railway corridors, as well as those that we've touched upon, which were identified in the PPS. And so the City of Kenora official plan requires that application for planning approvals for residential uses within 300 meters of a railway corridor shall be accompanied by a noise study. And Ms. Wheatley will confirm that the applicant is aware of this, and they will be submitting a noise study as part of future planning approvals, such within site plan control. The property is currently zoned RU, rural zone, and institutional zone within the zoning bylaw. Of course, this application here today is to amend that to change the zoning to R3, residential third density. And this is required to enable the future residential development of the site. The R3 zone allows for the redevelopment of full range of housing forms and other compatible uses serviced by municipal sewer and water. As a result of interdepartmental and agency circulation, there are no major concerns identified, only comments from engineering, sewer and water, and CP Rail, which will guide development of the site plan by the proponent. Notice of the application was given in accordance with Section 34 of the Planning Act. The Planning Advisory Committee had the opportunity to consider the application at their meeting on November 16th. Planning Advisory Committee does recommend approval of the application. And as of the date of this report, and as of today's date, the Planning Department has received no public comments pertaining to the application. So in an evaluation prepared by the city planner, the proposed rezoning to R3 will allow for a full range of options for residential development. Under the policies of the established area, this development will be limited to medium density, as I did touch upon earlier in my presentation. Both the provincial policy statement and the official plan are supportive of residential development. Any future development of more than 4 dwelling units will be subject to site plan control. And again, the official plan requires planning approvals to allow for residential land uses within 300 meters to be accompanied by a noise study. The applicants have been informed that a noise study must be submitted with their site plan control application once a detailed design can guide that study and any site improvements that may be required. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Melissa. At this point, we invite any public comment, and I would confirm with the clerk that there is nobody that has joined us today. So at this time, I would open it to council. If council has any questions of either Melissa or Laura. Councillor Smith, please.
Could I just ask a question? You say the property is zoned RU and institutional, but when I look at figure 3, I just see the RU designation. So is there a part of that I'm missing, or how would that be noted?
You are correct. When I look at figure 3, I see the same thing. I believe that there may be a portion that abuts Evergreen that was touching upon that institutional area. I will defer it to Ms. Wheatley if she has any clarification on that. Oh, did we lose her? Unfortunately, I don't have the benefit of the GIS in front of me, but the report as prepared by the city planner does indicate that it was institutional. To the best of my knowledge, I do recollect there being a small portion of institutional as well. And I think that, again, may have been one of those boundary, yeah, I think that the small road allowance abutting Evergreen is institutional, yeah.
Okay, that answers my question. I was just curious because I didn't see it on the...
Laura, can you hear us again?
Or I can hear you now.
Okay.
Laura, did you hear Councillor Smith's question about which part was the institutional?
Sorry, I didn't hear the question.
Can you, Sharon, can you?
I
turn your mic?
had just asked Laura out of curiosity, I see that figure 3 denotes all of the, what we can see of that property as RU, and I wondered what portion was institutional. Melissa said that it's probably right at the very bottom that we can't see.
No, it's actually a
No,
road
it's
allowance,
top.
so
At the very
it's,
top.
Where
Institutional
Evergreen
portion is
School is.
actually right at the very top.
yeah.
Oh, okay. So I just asked the question out of curiosity, because I didn't see it, so it's
It would be
nothing
the-
that you have to
yeah.
respond to, Laura, thank you.
All right, is there any other questions of council? Hearing none, I now declare this meeting closed. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
Oh, that's very kind. No, you know what, I was looking at figure 2. Figure 3 does identify the road allowance.
Thank you, Melissa.
You're welcome.
In the future, will you do them all? Because if you always come to the table with with nobody raising or yelling at us, that would be great.
I think we got lucky, yeah. Beginner's luck, we'll call it
Not
that.
controversial?
Well, thank you.
Doesn't
You're
impact
welcome,
anybody.
happy holidays to all.
News story.
Just wait. Just wait.
Great. Makes my life simpler, Stace. No phone calls tonight.
Okay, I really don't, how long did that take? We had anticipated it to be.
No.
Oh, that's so nice of you.
That's very exciting. That proposal. It's very exciting. What did she say? How many units?
It'd be exciting if somebody actually visits.
Something.
Maybe. I